lined up here. Here we go. There. All right. I thought I could be spotlighted with Joanna. Let me see if I can get us add spotlight. Here we go. There's both of us.
Hello.
Hey, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Woohoo! All right. So people are still joining, so we can kind of get a soft start here. Welcome to Saturday.
There you
Yeah,
are.
yeah. Sometimes when people are joining, that list bounces around, and if you're trying to click on something, you can mistakenly mute someone. um, things you learn. Zooming around the planet these days. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Joanna. So excited to have Joanna Schmidt here this afternoon.
Highlight
Joanna's been
what? Who? Can you highlight the thing about
has been a longtime friend of Congress.
Okay.
Do you remember what year did you first come, Joanna?
Gosh, I don't remember. It was probably about 10 years ago. Yep. I was drawn to the Congress had taken a class from Mary Getton.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Mary's a wonderful ally. So, yeah, Joanna has been an animal communicator and has worked in the embodied intuitive arts for a couple decades. She has 2 books out, where Spirt and Earth Meet, I think, is one, and Energetic Boundaries 101 is the other. She is excellent. She's been intuitive since childhood, so she played with the fairies growing up. And I think because of that, she has really learned how to navigate having fluid boundaries. That's my view, is that she's really excellent at knowing, how to navigate having, because you have to have soft boundaries to let things in, but you can't have totally open boundaries. So it's finding that, doing that dance. And Joanna lives in Bellingham, and she's a wonderful animal communicator and shamanic practitioner. She's very powerful. She comes across kind of as so gentle and sweet, but boy, myself and others I know have had just tremendous help from her as a shamanic practitioner. So, welcome, Joanna.
Gosh, thank you. And can y'all hear me now? I'm unmuted and everything.
We can hear you.
Yep.
I can hear you at least.
Oh, it's nice to see you guys. Hi. Oh, and thanks for joining me for this class today. I'm so thrilled to be bringing this work to the Congress for so many reasons. So this class is all about unifying spirit and earth within us. And to get going for this class, I'd love to give you a little outline of what we're going to be doing, to give you a heads up, and then we'll get going. So there'll be 3 segments to this class. We'll be talking a bit about how I got started with this work, and then I'm going to share one of my favorite centering techniques so we can all get very present and very centered. And then we'll call on the Devas that we'll be talking about today, including the Deva of Breath and Presence, Unconditional Love and Gratitude, and Intent. And then in the second segment, we'll be meeting specifically the Deva of Breath and the Deva of Presence as an embodied experience. And I'll be talking a little bit, but really I want this workshop to be extremely experimental for you guys, so you can play with these practices as we're working. So you are a part of this process. And then the third section is about meeting the Devas of Unconditional Love and Gratitude and Intent, again, as this embodied experience. So that's the overview of the class. For the meditations, I'll be kind of guiding you as a journey. And with the meditations too, I'll say, I invite you to even like look away from the computer and not have your fixed gaze on the computer when we're doing this, so you can really tune in and listen in. So it's a little housekeeping. And if anything I say, if you have any questions about it, put it in the chat box and Lindsay will read it out as we get there. Okay, so here we go. To start about talking about unifying spirit and earth, I want to tell you a little bit about my journey and how I got started with that particular aspect of my work. And it's years ago, I was struggling. I was too sensitive. I was taking in way too much information just in my work life and in my daily life. And I was running into these kind of dead end boundaries that I think a lot of us were probably taught about, this, fixed rigid walls and shields and golden bubbles, and this idea that we're either open or we're boundaried. It didn't work for me. And it wasn't a match for some of the early stuff that I learned from the fairies when I was a kid. So I started asking different questions about boundaries. And particularly, I wanted to be able to connect with my allies, my spirit allies, my fairy allies, without fragmenting myself. So I think a lot of us probably have had training where we either learn to talk with animals, connect with fairies, or even take a shamanic journey where we leave our body. So that part of us, that spirit, energy, consciousness, leaves our body. And then we go and we do our magical work. It's powerful. And then we come back to our body to integrate. And for me, that work was always powerful, but I didn't want to have to fragment myself. I felt like I feel that the earth is sacred, and I feel that the part of my body that is made of the earth is as sacred as the earth. And so when I started asking these different questions, I took a journey. I went to my allies, and I was standing in a circle of my allies, and I said, "Hey, I want to transform this. How can I do this?" And they posed this question to me, and it changed my world. They said, "So Joanna, you've been trained that everything that you interact with in the spirit realms exists within you as it exists outside of you." I was like, yeah, I know this. You've taught me this. And I knew it as like holographic universe theory and the Native American First Natives philosophies of as within, so without. So I said, yeah, I know this. Yeah, thanks. I was kind of excited and eager to go. And they said, "So why are you fragmenting yourself to come and meet with us? Why can't you just meet with us in your heart?" Blew the doors off my idea of what spirituality was, blew the doors off it. And from that point on, I went on a quest. I was so curious on how to transform all of the ways that I worked with energy and intuition and animal communication, and even those journeys to the middle and upper and lower world that I took for my work. I wanted that to be embodied. So I went to work with my allies, and I came up with a boundary formula that was a series of things that both helped me reconnect with my center when I would fragment without blame and judgment for myself, because like who needs that, right? And also to help me stay centered in my own natural boundary. The kind of natural boundary I'm talking about is the boundary that we're all born with, and then stress and trauma and the kind of things that chisel away at us, and the ways we forget that we're whole, it just makes our natural boundary very thin and not very in great working order. So that's why we end up relying on like shields and walls, right? So this boundary formula, I'm going to share screen here and pull this up. Oh, can you enable that, Lindsay? So you let me know when that's enabled. And oh, there it is. Okay, great. And hopefully I can pull this up and present. All right, you guys seeing the screen? I'm hoping you can. Okay. So this is the formula for creating and tending the natural boundary. And as you see, these are going to be the allies that we're going to be working with today. So what I come to know as our natural energetic boundary is our earthly physical body being unified with our energy, whatever that is to you, spirit, soul, consciousness. Those two things are woven together with our breath. That creates our presence anchored in the present moment, which then we have this spacious, wonderful opening to be able to feel safe enough to weave in our unconditional love and gratitude for ourselves and everything that's showing up with us in this present moment. And then our intent ties it all together. And this creates our natural energetic boundary. And this formula is in both of my books. The second one, When Spirit and Earth Meet, it's outlined really clearly with some really cool practices and exercises. So in the process of working with creating this formula and then working with it, so I could actually be creating a natural boundary in my daily life, what I came to learn, I was a little slow to the party on this one, but what I came to learn is that these beings are things that we definitely can invoke within us. Like our breath is an action, but the sentience and the deva that we're actually interacting with is the Deva of Breath. Each and every time we breathe. And presence is another ally, another deva that is existing. It existed before each of us were born, and it will exist after. And when we're working on being present and having embodied connections where our spirit is anchored and unified with our earthly parts, magic can happen. And there's these allies that are around us all the time to support us with this goal. And so I started to play with and learn about each deva individually. I used animal communication skills to talk with them, to get a sense of who they were, what they offered, what they didn't offer. And in the process, I learned how to directly weave my boundary. So I set my goal. All my interactions now with spirit are embodied, which is really powerful work. And it's powerful in a way too that it helps us humans heal that kind of chronic fragmentation that we do constantly in every moment when we scooch out into the past or the future or hide parts of ourselves that we don't feel are worthy, particularly in our relationships with spirit and fairies and devas. So I'm going to stop the share here. Okay. So these devas, they support healthy connections. They don't do the work for us, but they allow us to meet whole being to whole being, which is something, I don't know about you guys, but we don't get a lot of practice in, right? Our societies, the way our cultures are made up, it's usually like one person's in the center talking like I am now, and then everybody else is like in smaller boxes. That's kind of how it works even in everyday life, right? So when we're working with fairies and our animal friends and our, allies of nature, it makes sense that we at least try in those experiences to practice, to bring all of who we are to these experiences, including our earthly body. And these devas, they offer space for us to have these embodied experiences just by being who they are. They don't do it for us, right? It isn't one of these situations where somebody that's greater than us is going to swoop in and embody us. They actually are rather just around us all the time, reminding us that that's possible, reminding us that it's safe to do that with them, which is a profound gift for those of us who grew up in situations where that wasn't even welcome in our life. So my relationship with the fairies and devas has become one of learning how to be human and learning how to bring my earthly self into my fairy relationships. And it's phenomenal. It's life-changing. And I really hope that what I'm sharing today will help you guys do this too. The other thing about these allies is that they're always there for us. They're not our personal allies. I mean, we can definitely create very personal relationships with them, like I have, and I'm sure you have in your own ways. But they're around us all the time. They're like gravity, right? They're just always here. And this work is about, what's the beauty of it, I find, is that it's simple and that it's just bringing conscious relationship to these relationships that we have all the time ongoing. When we think about the relationship with our breath, for example, that breath, that ally of breath is the very first ally that greeted us when we were born. And it will be the very last breath that helps us exit from this world. Every step of our life, breath has been there unconditionally supporting us. And so just by being, and when we're, when I'm a little nervous, I haven't taught this class yet. So when we bring consciousness to this relationship of these allies that are around us all the time, just being, like, this real magic happens. So before we connect with these devas, I'm a fan of centering ourselves. So when they do show up, we are in our body, we're centered, we're as unified with spirit and earth within us as possible, knowing that it's a practice, and usually we're all about 70% there when we're really trying hard. So I'd love to talk and share with you one of my most favorite centering techniques. And some of you who've had kind of intuitive psychic training, this might not be this, you may be familiar with this. It's not one that I created, it's one that I learned. I learned this from Jill Miller, who's in Bellingham. And it's a practice of centering our awareness, which is an aspect of our mind. And it's centering our awareness into the center of our head. Anyone have familiar with this practice in this class? Okay. So our awareness, it's different than our energy and it's different than our mind. I think of our awareness as a kind of energetic component of our mind. And our awareness functions and behaves differently than our energy, but it's collaborative, meaning that if I'm here in my office and let's say if I am thinking about the Deva of the Salish Sea, and my awareness rushes out to the Salish Sea and is trying to meet the Deva of the Salish Sea, it's there, my awareness is there interacting with it. And my energy then will say, oh, what's going on? The magic is happening outside of me. I better fragment from the body and go out to the Deva of the Salish Sea and meet with that being. And most of us are using our awareness like this all the time, right? If we think of the past, usually our awareness is, going back into the past to try to hash something out or figure it out, or even integrate something that we've learned in the Congress just last night. We go into the future, wondering what's going to happen. We try to scout out future events so we're prepared. Again, this is our awareness shooting out of our brain, going in and interacting, and then coming back with this information, which is kind of the root of all this habit of fragmentation when we're working with spirit and fairies and energy, which is this idea I talked about, which is we gather this sacred part of this energetic sacred part of ourself up and out of our body, go and experience something, and then come back. And while I firmly believe this served a purpose for us as humans for a long time, most of us in our life now, we have physical safety. We can interact with our world in a way without feeling afraid. We have this ability to actually include our body in these interactions because we know now that our bodies aren't something to just escape, that they have so much to offer our sacred experiences, including discernment comes from our body, physical intuition. So our experiences with spirit we can taste them, we can smell them, we can hear them, rather than just having a spiritual experience, and our body, our energy can't taste, right? So centering our awareness in the center of our head is about finding our awareness where it is in the world. Sometimes people have split awarenesses. Sometimes it's just one kind of blob of awareness out in front of us. It's about locating that awareness and then bringing it into the center of our head. I'm going to show you another slide here. There we are. So this little line drawing is one that I made. The center of our head. I know this to be our pituitary gland. So it's gosh darn center of the head, right? So it's a little bit above the ears. It's not the third eye. It's actually kind of behind the spine, or excuse me, behind our third eye, directly where our spine would attach if it kept going up. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And our pituitary, or the center of our head in our pituitary gland, our gland is really little, but when our awareness is there, it is in the most powerful place it could possibly be. Because in the center of our head, I'm going to use a Star Trek analogy. I hope that's okay. So I'm a Star Trek fan, and I think of Captain Picard in The Next Generation. So if something's happening, if he's running around the ship, he's checking on sickbay, he's running down to engineering to figure out what's going on, like that guy is going to miss what's going on, right? But if he's in his captain chair with one push of the button, he could see what's going on with sickbay. He could check on the status of the Borg, right? It's like fine. So when our awareness is in the center of our head, we are essentially in our captain's chair. And it's this amazing spacious place, despite its physical size, where our awareness has access to everything going on. And it gives it's like an empowerment practice for our mind, in that it allows our mind to have access to simultaneously information about our body, about our digestive system, our pulses, our breath, our proprioception of where we are in time and space, as well as having these kind of, I'm going to go sci-fi here for a second, these kind of GoPro cameras around us as well, so we can see on the edge of our natural boundary without leaving our space. And so the center of our head can feel like a really small place for our awareness, but I want to share that it's got big magic, and it's a powerful place to be. And the other thing that I'll say is, going back to that idea of our energy following our awareness, is when our awareness is nestled and centered in the center of our head, our energy naturally stays in our body, because it's regularly being fed all this information that we need to stay alive, and all of these fantastic systems of our body that tells us if we should be stressed or if we can be present. And bringing it to the Fairy Congress, when our awareness is in the center of our head, our energy is in our body, we can interact with the fairies and the nature spirits and the weather beings, all from right here in our own space. And it's powerful. So to center our awareness, I would love to talk you guys through this, and have each of you fairy friends just feel into what your awareness feels like for you. Some people, their awareness feels kind of spongy and kind of cloud-like. Some students have described it as feeling like water. And if you're curious of how to find your awareness, since we're on Zoom, let's work with this Zoom computer thing as an ally, is you can like look right into the Zoom camera and feel yourself kind of go into the computer for just a second and then come back. That's going to be your awareness doing that zooming. And when you can feel your awareness, just explore it. Like, what does it feel like? What are the qualities of your awareness? What shape is it? How does it feel when you consciously move it? Like, try moving it from side to side, up and down. And then see what you can do to invite your awareness to anchor back into the center of your head. If your eyes are still open, I invite you to soften your eyes or close your eyes. And let this be an internal process of exploring. Sometimes I'll let my awareness kind of roll around an imaginary wooden track and then kind of plunking down into the center of my head. My mom has this great analogy of putting her awareness in neutral. So it's not forward of her or behind her. And when you are able to anchor your awareness into the center of your head, notice the distinct change that you feel in your body, in kind of the quality of calmness in your thoughts, or the quality of presence that you feel in your body. And if you're not sure if you're there, just kind of roll around your awareness in your head and see if there's kind of like a little pocket you can drop it into, almost like a billiards ball to drop into the pocket. And when we first drop into the center of our head, it can feel kind of awkward at first. It feels like we're kind of in a little box or we're really contained. That shifts, that goes away. It's almost like when we first go into a dark room, we're looking for a light switch. Let yourself just feel that kind of awkwardness for a moment as your awareness adjusts to being in its center place. Almost like letting your eyes get used to being in that dark room. And those of you who have centered already, I invite you to feel what has shifted within you and your relationship with the computer. Because so often, in truth, when we've been on Zoom for too long, it's one of the reasons why we feel so fried and burned out is because our awareness has been like in the computer or like in the room of the person we've been talking with on the computer. So you can just see what that feels like to be in your own space. Okay, so thanks for trying that with me. And before we go to the next segment, I want to check in. And so if there's anyone has any quick questions about what we've done so far, can you pop them in the comments and Lindsay will check in? I'll stop that share. Okay, are we good or are there some questions?
So there's one question of like, why do you not want to close the eyes?
Oh, you can close your eyes for sure. I'm sorry if I mixed words there. Yeah, you can close your eyes. There is benefit of, although practicing this while your eyes are open, the centering of the head practice is one that I strive to use all the time. Like if I feel like I'm succeeding in my day, I feel like I'm centered about 80% of the day, which means that, I'm talking with people, I'm interacting, I'm playing with the dogs, I'm being silly while being centered. So yeah, either or. It can be helpful when you're first starting to close your eyes, but yeah, it's helpful to do both for sure. Great. Any other questions?
One more question. Do you think awareness is a whole body thing or just in your head?
I think it's both. I think of our energy as very similar as our physical system. So it's like our core is our body, right? But it's also just our core. So our awareness is a centering of the mind thing, but and when we center our awareness, when we get really practice at it, it feels like everything in our body and our energy snaps into place. It's like a upper neck chiropractic adjustment for our energy in some ways. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. Okay, so let's go on to section 2. So now that we're centered, I would love to actually call on these devas as an opening of directions and have each of you be very present in your center, centering your awareness. And as you're centered, practice sharing space with these devas as we call them in, rather than rushing out to meet them. So I call on and honor the devas of breath, presence, unconditional love and gratitude and intent. Thanks for joining us in this class. Thanks for playing with us and sharing this space. Welcome. Okay. So let's get to know each one of these devas now individually. So let's start with breath. And if you're moved, I invite you to even in this moment, notice, what is your relationship with your breath? Is it, are you in the Deva of breath close? Or do you have a sporadic relationship? Do you guys sometimes ghost each other? Do you like call on each other only when you need something or you're feeling stressed out? Like, what's that quality of that relationship like for you? And as you're exploring that, I'm going to do another screen share. Okay. All right. So in writing When Spirit and Earth Meet, I had this really great fortune. I called up Deborah Koff-Chapin and I said, I am feeling called to ask for your images in the book. And she was very busy. And she said, okay, well, here's a link to my archives. Go through and tell me which ones you want to include. And this was a big process for me. I spent actually a couple of months going through her images late at night. I was scrolling. Felt like a touch drying stalker. But as I was going through these images, I was specifically asking the images, the energy that was held in the images, if they wanted to be the face of these individual allies. And this was the face, the being, the image that held up its hand and dropped into that place and agreed to be the face of breath. And I'm sharing this image, of course, with her permission here. So I'd love to share a poem from the book. It is like the third chapter, and it's called Spirit and Earth Unite to the Rhythm of Your Breath. And as you're listening to this poem, you're welcome to close your eyes again, or you could look at the image. The intention of reading this is to share a deeper relationship that's possible with your own breath. Breath was Earth's and spirit. Excuse me. This is funny. I had my ringer on in case Lindsay needed to call, but I'm going to turn that off. Okay, here we go. Breath was Earth and Spirit's firstborn. She was born a master of creating connections, as she was born out of the first great passionate collaboration that collected her parents in love. Breath embodied and carried with her from her mother the rhythms of ocean tides, tides that lovingly flowed through her whole being, calmly and steadily. From her father, she was gifted a profound celestial spaciousness, which she embodied each and every time she paused to rest and relish the gifts before her. At the moment of her breath began creating connections. She created connections between heart and mind, land and sky, dream and possibility. Within the connections breath created, new conversations began. The light began to speak with the dark. The ocean began to speak with the shore, and muscle began to speak with bone. And to this day, the same breath that fuels and feeds the beating of our heart, that births a conversation between our rhythmic heart drumbeat and our soul. Breath's parents connect in love, and their fierce, passionate dance continues on with each one of us. I know breath to be a strong ally for each of us. And the Deva of Breath is a profound, strong being that supports so much for us humans. And it's a Deva that is there always connecting with us. And so this section is about bringing consciousness to the Deva of Breath and our relationship with it. And so probably a lot of us have taken quite a few classes in breath work and breathing, and that's not what this class is going to be about. I mean, yes to all those practices. But the relationship with breath, like any relationship, is one that's probably going to be pretty chaotic. I think that our breath, when we're breathing, I think of it as our body and our energy are dancing with breath inside of our bones, inside of our skin. And like any kind of a dance, it's not one that's that's choreographed. It's one that's kind of chaotic, and sometimes it's silly, and sometimes we stop and pause because our feet hurt, and sometimes we're dancing in connection and looking at each other in the eyes, and other times we're just dancing. And so when we're breathing, I love the image of this visceral feeling of when I feel movement and stretchiness in my guts and my belly and my back and my spine. I think of that as the Deva of Breath kind of pushing up against me, reminding me of my relationship with breath, reminding me of my agreement to be a human on earth and to be an embodied being. And so this work that we're going to be working with breathing to be in our body, it's not one that is fixed. It's not fancy. It's not about breathing deep. In fact, I actually encourage you not to focus on taking deep breaths, because deep breaths, as most of us are trained, have a tendency to push our energy up and out of our body. If you want to try it just in this moment to see, we take a deep breath, we can feel our energetic or our energy spirit kind of swell above our head and then kind of slowly drop back in. That's not what I'm talking about here, because an embodied relationship is a consistent relationship. So when we're breathing to be in our body, rather than breathing deep, rather than trying to force something to happen, which those of us who work with fairies and nature, like we know forcing is really not the way, like collaboration is the way. So when we're working with our breath, it's more about just noticing what's happening. And sometimes even just paying attention to our breath and letting our body do the breathing and letting our mind just not have to focus on that lets our body do the work. And then the breath becomes natural. It becomes calm. It becomes chaotic and silly. And so breathing to be in our body, that's a term I use a lot in my book and in my classes, it is about breathing to anchor our energy, again, whatever that is to you, soul, spirit, consciousness, into our body. So for me, what that means is letting our inhale create space. Letting our inhale feel the stretchiness of our breath pushing in our body. That's creating room. That's creating presence and permission for our energy to anchor in. And on the exhale, rather than pushing back out, it's a matter of like our energy anchoring into our body. Oh, you can't see me. It's like anchoring into our body. Saying, this is my space. This is my sacred temple. My body is where I belong. We take a breath in, we create room. We feel ourselves collaborating with the Deva of Breath, saying, yeah, I'll be alive for another moment. I'm going to be embodied. I'm going to be here. And on the exhale, we get to just kind of rest inside of our bones and our body. And then letting this be this kind of co-created, beautiful, messy, disorganized, organized chaos that just happens inside of us, like any kind of natural relationship. And it's happening, creating a conversation between our body and our energy. and the Deva of Breath. And the beautiful thing of this is when our body and energy are kind of dancing with breath, they're integrating with each other. They're exchanging information. So if we have been fragmenting for a little while, they can come back and exchange notes. See how each other is doing. It's like a passionate love affair that's happening inside of our own body. Presence. I'd love to show you the Deva of Presence as well. So this is the image again. This is another one of Deborah's images that raised its hand, wanting to be a part of the formula that helps us humans be embodied and have embodied relationships. And presence is an interesting thing. We'll go down the rabbit hole for just a second, because presence is one of these things that is created when we're breathing to be in our body, when our spirit and earth are united and moving and dancing to our breath. And presence is something that exists outside of us as well. And I don't know about you guys, but I have come to learn and believe that the universe is based in resonance, meaning that if we're focused on something in ourself and in alignment with it, we will draw more of that to us. And so presence is one of those things we can draw to us. The Deva of Presence is that when we're breathing to be in our body, when we're centered in our head, and we're invoking and sparking our presence into being, the Deva of Presence comes closer, and our relationship with presence becomes stronger, which makes things so much easier. It's easier to drop into meditation. It's easier to not scout out danger in the future or look for fairy magic outside of ourself when we can just tap into it when we're walking down our city streets. So I would love to talk you through, let me do a time check. I'd love to talk you through a very short meditation here to breathe to be in your body and feel the Deva of Presence coming closer to you. So for this meditation, you can get comfortable. Please do. If you want to look at the screen, you're welcome to. If you want to close your eyes or just look at something else, you're welcome to. We can start by just checking that awareness and making sure it's still in the center of our head. And if it's strayed, just lovingly pull it back to center. The center of our head, and being able to hold our awareness there. It's kind of like a muscle, and it takes practice. And once you feel centered in your awareness, the center of your head, I invite you to just notice what your breath is doing without changing anything. Just feel it. Feel the movement. Feeling the movement of our breath in our body can sometimes also shift our awareness from outside listening to inside listening. There's so much to learn about how breath moves in our body. But in this moment, I invite you to just feel the stretchiness of your belly, how your breath pushes against your spine when you breathe, the front side. Our connective tissue and fascia also stretches as a whole organ every time we breathe. And we inhale and exhale. Perhaps there's some noticing there you can feel as you're just noticing how your breath is moving in your body. And when you're ready to give your mind something to do, you can remind yourself that as you're breathing, you are dancing with the Deva of Breath inside your body. You're actively collaborating and co-creating with this Deva, who's so sweetly and generously reminding you that it's safe for your spirit, your energy, soul to anchor into your body in this moment. And let that process be one of just allowing. No need to think about where you've been, where you might go. Just dropping in this moment. And a lot of us who are doing this practice may start to feel that part of ourself, which we know as our presence, kind of come back online. Like, oh yeah, there I am. And as you sense that part of yourself, just acknowledge it. Welcome it back to this moment. And as you welcome your own presence back into being, while you stay centered, see if you can notice the spark of the Deva of presence around you becoming alive. The Deva of presence co-creates with everything creating this moment. The electricity powering our computers, the air, the wind, the water, the earth. The food we're digesting in our belly, dogs barking in the other room. Presence is dancing with all of it. And in this practice, I would love for you to play with this both hand. What does it feel like to be feeling presence within you, centered, and also being lovingly supported by the Deva of presence all around you? And when you're ready, knowing we're going to do a slightly longer meditation to drop in and do more of this in the next segment, I'd love for you to start to open your eyes and see what you can do to maintain this connection of inner and outer connection with your own center. Spirit and earth unified within you, dancing with breath, being held by the present moment. Just see what kind of energetic muscle power you can flex to let all that happen at the same time. We humans are phenomenal multitaskers, so this is a piece of cake. And then welcome yourself back into this moment. Thank you. Thanks for dropping in with me. How are we doing? Any questions from this point? Comments before we go into talking about the Deva of intent and unconditional love and gratitude? Ah, okay. Well, So I'm going to do something kind of unusual for a long Zoom class. I'm going to suggest, because we just are dropping in, I'm going to suggest we pause the class for a second and move our bodies and step away from the screen, because this class is all about embodiment, you guys. Let's put it into practice. We're humans. We don't have to conform. So I invite you for like the next, Lindsay, can you like time this? Like give us like a minute, and I'm going to put my screen off, put your screen off, step away, stand up. If you need to use the restroom, like run and use the restroom, and then come back and we'll do the next segment. Sound okay? Okay. Okay, starting to come back when you're ready.
So we do have a question now, if you're...
I'm so ready. Thank you.
Right. Great question from Tiffany. As a multitasker, how do you stay present while in the multitasking?
As a multitasker, how do you, you're a multitasker and you're trying to stay present. Yeah, that's a really great question. It's an art. It's definitely an art, and it's doable. I tend to multitask as well when I'm doing like business stuff for my business. And for me, one of the things that helps me, I don't know if this is something you can do, but I actually have, this is not a sales plug. You can make your own. I made cards with questions and reminders. This one is like the card of breath with a question to help me drop back into my breath. And I have them taped up all over my office. So when I'm going about one task to another, I have these cards that are reminding me to tune in. Post-its even work really well. The other thing is breath. It all comes back to breath, is because you can be working on one thing and then switch to the other, knowing your breath is the constant thread. Your breath is the constant thread that's helping you stay present. I hope that answers the question. Did you say there were two questions, Lindsay?
There is another question now. Oops. I didn't mean to spotlight me, sorry. When you do your shamanic journey work, do you still go to upper, lower, and middle worlds?
I do. And I do it as an embodied experience. Yeah. That's a whole other class, and I would love to share it with you. But it can be done, again, because we contain everything. And so I believe we contain everything. And so it's, we can go where we need to go and navigate with what we need to navigate, as long as we have clear integrity, permission, and intent. Yeah. All right. Any other questions before we switch over? Okay. So this is the one section I haven't taught yet before, so I'm going to be looking at my notes, and I appreciate your patience with that. So the Devas of intent and unconditional love and gratitude are this dynamic trio of beings. And I'm going to do another slide share. So I'd love to start with intent. Intent, as I know intent, is a weaver. And I'd love to share the poem from the book about intent. When Spirit and Earth gave birth to intent, curiosity and acceptance began to rise within the hearts of those who had resisted their union. Many even gathered to welcome and celebrate the arrival of intent, circling around to honor and witness. For intent was born a weaver of dreams and ideas. As intent wove, he danced. As he danced, he wove. And as he did, dream was woven into idea. Spirit was woven into body. And breath was woven into bone. As intent wove and danced, his body was fluid and breath-filled. His presence receptive, open and curious, creating a rich tapestry that was both fluid and structured, light-filled and dark, solid and flexible. Intent wove a new and profoundly beautiful tapestry that lovingly held his parents and siblings together within a layered constellation that existed within each of them and wove throughout their home and land. As intent wove this new tapestry into being, he wove with such a heightened level of reverence for all that is, that more and more beings gathered seeking inclusion within the fibers of this tapestry. As a result, intent danced and wove together all that is, all that ever will be, into the dynamic, spacious, breath-filled connected fibers that were sparked into being by the love and union of Spirit and Earth. Intent is a profound weaver, and not only does I say he, that's just how I know him to be, but you'll have your own experiences, I'm sure, putting whatever pronouns you need with that on there. But I know intent to be this weaver that is constantly reminding us that that natural boundary that I was talking about at the start of the class, that gives us this spacious place to be. All of who we are can be held within that natural boundary, which means intent directly helps us shift those habits of fragmentation. And unconditional love and gratitude, the Devas of unconditional love and gratitude. Here are the faces. Oh, let me see if I can go back here for a second. I don't know how to do that. Well, I'm gonna just tell the story.
There's an arrow. If you put your cursor at the bottom, I saw little arrows. I don't know if that
Oh,
helps
there
you.
it is. Yeah, it was hidden by the screen. Okay, let me go back here. So I'd love to share something profound about this image. So when I was writing the book, and again, I mentioned I was kind of internet stalking all the images of Deborah's in her archives. I had this idea of what intent was, and it was kind of this fixed idea. Maybe you guys have had this experience when you're creating something, or you think it should be a certain way. So I had this idea of intent, and I looked, and there were probably about 60 images that I put in the book thinking, maybe, and the devas of those drawings were like, maybe I could show up as the deva of intent, I suppose. And it wasn't until I kind of canned the whole idea that I felt this little tiny image, this like way back. This image is in one of our oldest archives. It was like there waving its sweet hand, like, I'll be the face of intent. And when I looked at the image, it was so perfect, like knowing that this deva is this weaver. It weaves together. It doesn't actually create our intentions and our dreams, but it helps us weave them together. It doesn't create the energy that it is weaving. It just ties it together and creating this like beautiful celestial spaciousness while it does. So I wanted to share that image as we go along here. Okay, and so these are the faces of unconditional love and gratitude as I know them. Again, these images are from Deborah. I'm sharing them with her permission. And this image popped up really quick for unconditional love and gratitude. In my explorations of these devas, I know them to be twin-like elements in that they're very similar, but they each have very unique qualities that they share. And when we're talking about unconditional love and gratitude and the gifts that these devas bring, what we're not talking about and what I have been exploring with them is what they don't do is they don't offer and embody that kind of codependent, I love you, please never leave me love. They don't offer gratitude that is conditional, gratitude that is only offered under certain conditions. They offer kind of this compassion soaked love and gratitude that for each of us exists so deeply in us that even our wounds and our hurts can't touch. So even if we have forgotten what unconditional love and gratitude is within us, it still exists deeply in there. And so when we're in relationship with them, it helps draw that out from our centers. They also, unconditional love and gratitude, the devas, they also offer this unwavering sense of belonging. This belonging that allows us to offer and honor our self-love equally when we're offering others love. And thus creating and further supporting that concept of whole being meeting whole being. We can give and receive love at the same time, which cancels out a lot of the conditional love that we were raised with, the kind of conditional gratitude we were raised with that often sparks habits of fragmenting our spirit from our body when we feel vulnerable. And so unconditional love and gratitude are vital elements in this boundary formula and bring so much profound inclusion to our exploration of embodied relationships and unifying spirit and earth within. And together, these devas, the three of them, unconditional love and gratitude and intent, they have this disarming quality that helps us completely step out of conflict when we are working with them consciously. We can step away from any roles we're embodying in Stephen Cartman's drama triangle, if you're familiar with that, and completely root ourselves into the present simply by acknowledging them. Again, these are devas that exist all the time, pretty much everywhere, accessible to each one of us. And so when we take a breath into those parts of our own being that remember unconditional love and gratitude that we carry with us in our body, and we spark that remembrance of that feeling, we are then in resonance with it and much easily be able to acknowledge when they come around externally. Oh, so I'm going to stop the sharing here and come back. Any questions at all so far before we do our last guided meditation? It's going to be a slightly longer one. We're good. Okay. So knowing that a lot of us have been on our computers all weekend, or at least, for good chunks of the time, for this last part, I'm going to invite you to, it's kind of unusual in a Zoom class, but I'm going to invite you to look away from the screen if you want. It's just, I'm going to put up a picture of, let's see. I'm going to put up the picture of the boundary formula. So if you want to look at it, you can. It's a nice soft background if you need something to look at, but you don't have to. And in this longer meditation, I'm going to drop in with you guys and we're going to go through it again, centering our awareness, breathing to be in our body, sparking our presence into being, tapping into the Deva of presence around us. And I can talk a little bit more deeply in the guided meditation of how to do that. And then we're going to call on the Deva of unconditional love and gratitude and intent and meet them as embodied beings. Oh, getting comfortable. As we're starting, I invite you for a moment to just simply do nothing. See how you can anchor yourself into this moment without jumping into the past or the future, shoulds or shouldn'ts. Just be here in this moment, sharing space. And when you're ready, you can tune into your awareness, find where it's located. Maybe it's still in the center of your head, maybe it's wandered off a little bit. When you find your awareness, if it's not in the center of your head, I invite you to offer it so much gratitude, so much love. Just gently guide it back to center. Perhaps even exploring the center of your head a little bit. How does it feel for your awareness to be lovingly held in that nest, that captain's seat? One image I'd like to personally play with is thinking of my awareness like a lotus flower, and the center of my head being like one of those crystal clear round fish bowls with fresh water. And when your awareness is anchored in the center of your head, no, it's not fixed. Play with it. You can move your head around and notice how your awareness can stay centered. It's like your own natural plumb line. It's interesting to explore how your spine feels different too when you're centered. Sometimes we have more awareness of our upper vertebrae and more centered posture shifts. When you're ready, you can start to bring your attention to your relationship with the Deva of breath. When you first notice it, just let it be. Don't fix it, don't change it. Just follow it. What's happening in that relationship? Take stock. These first couple breaths that you're taking as you're noticing, kind of like sitting down and having a cup of tea. The Deva of breath, checking in. How are you? How's our relationship today? Knowing that it's not about big breaths, it's not about deep breaths, it's just about letting your body, play with the Deva of breath. How does that movement move in your lower body, in your spine, your shoulders, your pelvic floor? Can you let your legs and your arms, your hands and your feet, and even your head be a part of this relationship with breath? As you're breathing, Allow this dance, this rhythm that's happening naturally in your body with breath, anchor your spirit, your soul, your energy into your body. Just by giving that part of yourself permission to be present inside your skin. Letting your breath move in your body and your awareness to notice it and feeling that movement happening inside your skin. Yes, this is a spiritual experience and also it's an embodied one. As your body and your energy are connecting here, notice the sparks of your own presence coming back to life. Our own presence is one of those things that sometimes can feel fleeting when we're busy, we're not in our body. So when our presence arises in our own self, welcome it back. It's precious. And in this inner world and your inner self, this dance, give yourself that welcome home, your presence, that welcome home. It's laced with love, gratitude for all that you are. As you start to notice your own presence coming online and being washed in your gratitude and love, you can start to notice the Deva of presence around you. Now that you're invoking it within you, start to notice that Deva of presence. It's around, collaborating with everything that's making up this moment. In your room, the computer, the Fairy Congress, connecting each one of us. The Deva of presence is there. Simply by tuning in with them. You tune in with this Deva of presence, it can be helpful to sense the quality of the air around you, around your body. For some of us, it might start to feel like a slightly heavier layer supporting us, supporting our shoulders and our body, cocooning us in a way, presence. And give yourself permission to be a whole being in this moment, in relationship with the Deva of presence. All of the beings that she is collaborating and co-creating with around you. See what it feels like to let yourself be a vital aspect of that equation. All the while feeling that thread of your breath and your relationship with the Deva of breath dancing in your body. This is where we get to practice both and. Centering in, being divinely human. wonderful, divine, kind of messy sloppiness of being human. We get to be that and also be in this rich tapestry. The present moment with all of these devas. Unconditionally. We belong here. Each one of us. I know the Deva of presence to have many faces, depending on who they are collaborating with in each moment. And notice how you sense the Deva of presence in this moment, based on what they're collaborating with in this moment. How do you sense them? Qualities are there. And how can you explore these qualities while staying in the center of your head? So you're sensing all this on the edge of your natural boundary, eliminating the need to merge with anything. So you get to keep your autonomy. Keep your relationship as a whole being, connecting with another whole being. When you're ready, you can start to feel around inside of your inner being, your inner world, for that place where you hold the remembrance of unconditional love and gratitude. Part of you that knows the feeling, can sense it, knows the profound power it has. And let your breath spark it into being. Like your breath can become a fireplace billows, blowing air on the embers of your remembrance of unconditional love and gratitude. Letting it grow. Letting it grow in a way that allows you to feel that remembrance of what it's like to feel unconditional love and gratitude, to receive it, to give it. And let that feeling start to emanate through your body. And as it's growing, notice the qualities of this energy that's emanating. Let yourself feel it. Let your breath dance with those qualities, noticing it. When we're breathing to be in our body, our breath becomes an organ of inner palpation. So your breath can explore this unconditional love and gratitude growing through you, emanating through your body, effortlessly, palpating it on all sides, seeing different aspects and different faces of it. And as unconditional, your own personal sense of unconditional love and gratitude is starting to emanate and flow through your being, let your awareness, while it's anchored in the center of your head, just notice the devas of unconditional love and gratitude that have been sparked into being in this shared space with them in our circle. Sometimes it can feel like these devas just take a step closer to listen in and pay attention to what we humans are doing. Curious beings. ready to collaborate and co-create this moment with us. Letting that thread of your breath move you from moment to moment, reminding you that you are safe to meet these beings, these devas, whole being to whole being. And sometimes it can be helpful to just welcome yourself back to this moment, like, whoa, thanks for showing up, human. Thanks for showing up, whole self. It's safe here. Giving yourself kind of a welcoming home to this moment while you're experiencing both and. Conditional love within while being held in the loving embrace of these dual elements, the devas of unconditional love and gratitude. And then lastly, let's also include our awareness of the Deva of intent, the weaver. Sometimes does their work silently and in the background and rarely takes the center stage, the Deva of intent. You even say internally to yourself, I am so ready to meet the Deva of intent. And then notice on the very edge, this natural boundary around you forms this matrix connecting your body and your soul. Notice this Deva of intent. Say hello. Perhaps thank them. Sometimes it can be helpful to track the Deva of intent by noticing the fibers of the present moment that are woven together in this moment. A kind of matrix netting that so many of us intuitive ones can sense and see in our world. Follow that threading of those networks right to the Deva of intent. Network of belonging. Network of belonging that's been woven together by our personal and collective dreams, ideas, and presences, where we're each a part of this collective, this network, and also still held so securely in our own center, in our own boundary, connected with our own relationship, our personal relationship with the Deva of Breath. And in your own way, I invite you to offer a few words quietly internally, your heart and your whole embodied presence, and just thank these devas that have been lovingly supporting you in your life, silently, quietly. Supporting and loving you while you dream and grow and learn, and become moment to moment. As you're doing so, now is a great time to double check that your awareness is still in the center of your head and isn't really close to one of these devas. Go on back in. And as you're in your body, the center of your head. Notice what intuitive firings and impulses inside your body are waking up. Notice how the sacredness of your body, which is made earth, is equally magic, equally powerful and divine as the part of you you know as energy, spirit, or soul. And notice when these two aspects of you unite, you're supported, you're held in peace and love. It's safe. And when you're ready, knowing that you can drop into this centered place within yourself anytime, these allies are always available to you. I would love for you to very gently start to shift your awareness into everyday consciousness, just by noticing the physical movement of your muscles as you breathe. It helps, you can put a hand on your belly or your chest, feel the rise and fall of your breath as you breathe in and out. And start to open your eyes and see your world around you. Letting yourself be both and for a moment, knowing this magic, these devas are around you all the time. And also in this moment, we're here together, starting to gather back around as a group on this Zoom call and our connections at the Fairy and Human Relations Congress. And as we come back, start to settle in as a group, I invite you to play with practicing. How can you maintain this thread with your breath? A great question, I think it was Tiffany had, of multitasking. How can we do this in this moment when we're sitting in connection with each other? Oh, thank you guys. How you doing? Thank you so much. So lastly, I would love to close the directions. I say close the directions, but really just mostly honoring the allies that showed up that I called in section 2, and knowing they're not going anywhere. These allies are always around. It's just a matter of focusing in our awareness and our attention, saying hello to them. So I do this by putting my hands on my heart, my belly, and I name them. Thank you, Devas of Breath. Presence, unconditional love, and gratitude and intent. Thank you for your being. Thank you for being in the world and sharing space with us. Devas, you are honored and you are loved. And may you be returned back to wherever you're most needed at this time. Knowing you're not really going anywhere, just creating some room for everyday living. Thank you, allies. Thank you, Devas. Okay. Oh, welcome back to you. Thank you for joining me for this class. Do you guys have any questions? We have a few minutes, like a minute for questions before you guys go into like individual groups, I think.
There was one question that was actually before the meditation. So I'm not sure if it was answered, but I'll just speak it. Someone was wondering, are there any more ideas on how to bring presence?
How to bring presence. I don't understand that question. to bring presence, like bring presence within us, or whoever asked that question, can you clarify in the chat?
I invited.
Yeah, if it's an internal, I'll share that if it's an internal presence we're trying to bring, I think of it as a dropping in, like a series of dropping back in. Especially knowing that like our own presence isn't really alive and vital unless our spirit and our energy are united. Like the full presence that, I mean, there's a presence there, but it's not that full, juicy presence that we feel when it comes back online. So for that, when I'm feeling totally not connected with that part of myself, which happens sometimes, I'll start with my body and I'll acknowledge like the sacredness of my body. Sometimes like I'll touch my knees or I'll pat myself down like with a qigong pat, just naming my body as sacred. And then that allows my energy, my spirit to drop in. And then I focus on my breath. So it's like a step into that awakening presence within me. And as far as connecting with presence outside, there's so many ways we humans try to do that unsuccessfully. Like sometimes we check our phones and we, try to ground through other people or trees or whatever. But I find the fastest and most effective way is to invoke our own presence, which allows the Deva of presence something to connect with that's similar to them. When we're present, the Deva of presence kind of swoons in. It's like, oh, look, they're whole, they're here, they're willing. All of who they are is wanting to connect with me, which is such a generous invitation for the Deva of presence. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Lovely.
Any other questions before we finish our group here? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. I actually see one in the comments here. I'm going to jump in, Lindsay, and read one of the comments. Someone is sharing that they found a hard time connecting with presence because they didn't feel safe in their body. And I'd love to speak to that in just a few words. That's a lot of us feel unsafe in our bodies. A lot of us feel unsafe in the present moment. And that's why this work is a practice. And I invite you, if you've had that experience of not feeling safe in your body, is start small. Don't jump into the deep end right away. Start with one part of your body that you feel safe embodying. And usually I say usually, but for a lot of us who have a background of trauma, the part of us that we can feel moving is the upper part of our chest, where we upper chest breathe, right? It's like our neck and our upper rib muscles are the ones that are doing the breath work. And we can feel movement there usually safely. So I invite you to start there. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Lovely.
Oh, and this is an important question. Where can my books be purchased? Thank you for asking that. My website, I'll put it in the chat. My website, joannaschmidt.com. You can get them, and they're also both on Amazon. But I'll put the website in the chat if you want to buy local. Oops.
And her website is also up on the Fairy Congress website on her.
Oh, good. That's probably going to be better than my dyslexic typing here. Yeah, find them there.
Just go to fairycongress.com and the presenters.
Yep, cool. All right, thank you.
So I'd love to do a little bit of housekeeping. So yeah, we're going to break into small groups from here and then have a break and then come back for the ritual at 6:15. And we're kind of, the original schedule is to have small groups till 6. We're thinking of making them a little bit shorter because we're finding on our end, maybe a 20-minute break is a little bit more comfortable. So I'm just going to let you know that. So, oh, and for the ritual, I want to remind you, a candle and a stone, please bring with you so you can make the most of it. If you can't get one, you can always use an imaginary one, but if you have one, that will enable you to be fully present with the process. Do I have anything else? I think that's it. So I'm going to split us up.
Costumes.
Oh, yes, and costumes. Thank you, Annie. So if you, yes. Costumes are just a way to raise your, oh, and somebody, I'm echoing somebody. Okay. So yeah, costumes are a way for you to elevate your energy and bring you closer in vibration to the fairy realm. And it's just, in a way, it's also a sign to them that you want to connect, that you're dressing up to meet them. It's an occasion. So that's why we do it. So goodbye, you all. It's always so fun. It's like a launching to go into breakout rooms. Okay.
May I ask really quick?
Okay,
what we are
sure.
discussing?
Oh, yes. Good point, Tiffany. So you can discuss your experiences in this workshop. Would be a great place to start. Or perhaps if there is something in the morning workshop that you would like to bring forward, or maybe there is something you went outside during the break and managed to connect with some fairies or meet some fairies, you could also bring that. Or any questions that you are having so far for the weekend are all wonderful things. Okay? All right. Goodbye, everybody.